Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making it out for Fridays Are for Founders, produced by the DEC Network. I'm Trey Bowles, co-founder and chair of the DEC Network. We've been putting these events together every week for the last few weeks to try to help entrepreneurs and small businesses address some of the issues that we all face as we're entering this sort of COVID-19 pandemic. We've gotten the opportunity to cover a lot of different topics, things like funding, what are funding sources, what are available, and how do I get them? We've talked about sort of sales and marketing approaches. We've talked a little bit last week. We had Jamie Ice from 6th Avenue Homes and 6th Avenue Storytelling talking about the importance of telling stories and what does that mean for us coming out of this pandemic? How do we reconnect with our customers? How do we communicate with them? How do we think innovatively as we're looking and moving forward? And then we also discussed what is our 30, 60, 90-day plan for the COVID pandemic. And so I think we will continue to kind of focus on that and come up with new things every week. We'll have a different entrepreneur, small business owner come out with us and participate in what we're doing here. This week, we're lucky to have the DEC CEO, Bill Chinn. Some of you guys have met him, some of you have not. He's been the CEO since about August of last year and is doing an incredible job there. We'll let him kind of speak to what he's doing and what his vision is for the DEC and how the DEC's responding to the coronavirus pandemic and what the plans are in the future. And then next week, we're going to have Carl Dorval, an amazing entrepreneur, SMU grad who's done all kinds of different entrepreneurial ventures, and he'll be coming on and talking about some of his personal experiences having to deal with economic downturns and obstacles that come to your business and so forth and so on. So we're excited to have that. We've got a whole lineup of people that will be coming in the next few weeks every Friday. So thank you guys for being here. Excited to have you here. We are experiencing some interesting technical difficulties as we're getting going with Bill here. So I'll probably just start. Hopefully we'll mix up things a little bit today in terms of how we're gonna do the process of this. So let's just get right into it. If people have questions, please post your questions over here in the chat area. We can go directly through that. And there's Bill Chinn. Perfect timing. Bill, how are you?
Good, thank you.
All right, so welcome everybody. We are visited today by Bill Chinn, the CEO of the DEC Network, and we're going to be able to go through some questions for him. Please, as you guys have questions, write them right down here in the corner, and we'll make sure that we get those to him. We are also visited today by our returning moderator, Delanie Majors. Thanks for being back today, Delanie. I will hand it over to you, and after I kind of kick us off, Bill, to start us off, can you just give us a little bit of your history, your background? As I tell people, I don't like to read bios because they're embarrassing and sometimes too long. And so what we really want is for you to have the opportunity to tell the people that are listening about yourself and what you would have them know about you. So go a little bit over that, your background, and kind of how you got to be here at the DEC, and then we'll turn over to Delanie and let her ask some questions for a bit.
Yeah, great, Chad. As I get older, this gets longer. So I always wanted to be a nonprofit, but really couldn't afford to. So out of college, I joined what was a startup, an entrepreneurial organization. And over the next 20 years while I was there, it turned into a Fortune 300 company. So it was a great experience to see it go from entrepreneurial to Fortune 300. It was GameStop here in town, the video game guys. And as packaged good video games began to lose a little bit of excitement, a lot of us were starting to think about what's next. I looked at that 20 years and said, what part of it did I enjoy the most? And certainly the first part, where we were very entrepreneurial and it was very startup phase. So I got an MBA at SMU, used it to kind of pivot into the entrepreneurial world. Typical story here. Started a couple of businesses, one which failed miserably, but it informed the next business I started, which actually worked reasonably well. And it allowed me to kind of jump into some of the nonprofit work that I always wanted to do. And it really enjoyed being executive at nonprofit, but when an opportunity came for the Deck Network, it really caught my attention because I missed the business. And this combines really my two passions of doing nonprofit work, but in a really business-oriented environment. So I have this sort of meandering resume, and the only job description that made that make sense was the one of as the CEO of the Deck. So it worked out great for me.
Awesome. Great. Then I'll go ahead and jump into some of our questions. Like Trey was saying, ever since you've been at the Deck, what have kind of been your main goals? What's been the vision, and how have you been executing on those things?
Well, it's a great organization with an amazing brand and amazing reputation. So it was really about releasing that value. The value was all there. It was just a question of how do we release it and grow it. And so, it was a relatively pleasant task because all the pieces were there. And we've managed to do that. I think we managed to grow it. And obviously, COVID has changed a lot of what we're doing. And frankly, it's changed the strategy going forward as well. I think same for a lot of organizations here.
Speaking of that, what are some of the things that the Deck is doing to support entrepreneurs during COVID? What are those strategies? What are those, what is the Deck putting out there for our entrepreneurs?
Great question. So we started relatively early, and we're really supported by a great board and a great board chair. And we kind of said, look, how are we going to approach this? And we came up with what we call a three-legged stool. And the first leg of that stool is that we had entrepreneurs and small business owners, really desperately pecking in all over the internet, trying to find resources and information on how to deal with this crisis. So our chairman, Trey, went out and really organized about 100 different civic and philanthropic organizations to put all their content in one site. And that's the Let's Grow North Texas Business website, which is a one-stop shop for small business owners and entrepreneurs, and saves a ton of time on just kind of how sort of informationally, but also materially, how do I find the resources to get out of this crisis? The second leg of the stool was we realized, a lot of the folks at the Deck Network were on the phone with entrepreneurs, and we just couldn't scale that. We just don't have a lot of employees. So we said, how do we scale this? Because we're running into our constituents who are very capable and have really great businesses, but they've often skew a little bit younger. They've not been through 9/11 crisis or the Great Recession. And in our network, there was this large amount of people who wanted to help, who were retired or sitting on the sidelines, who had that crisis management experience. And matching those two groups together became kind of a passion. And so we can scale that. And, immediately we created this fast start mentoring program. And sort of within 96 hours, we had 100 business owners who came forward and said, I want to mentor. It's grown significantly since then, but the start was really meteoric. And so we match those folks with, sort of crisis management experience with our small business owners who need that, because, there are some things that are intellectual and there's some things that are experiential. And I think crisis management is experiential. You need to find someone who's been through some of these things before. So that's been a great program. The third leg of our stool, which is really run by Trey, and this has been amazing, is creating a fund, and the fund specifically for those who are missed by the SBA loans and a lot of the other aid programs out there, because we've got a lot of folks out there that were didn't have business bank accounts, and they may have commingled with their personal bank and their business, but that disqualified them. They hadn't incorporated. They don't pay through W-2. It's a founder and a spouse. A lot of these small businesses, typically in the underserved parts of our city, were missed by all of these government assistance programs. And so working with the city of Dallas and with the Chamber and the Citizens Council and all these amazing organizations, we managed to get a fund together that's going to really hit all those folks that arguably are the most important businesses in the DFW to make sure it survive this, because they're employing people in the underserved communities that we have, and finding the money and the funds, but not just the funds, the information necessary to make sure those businesses survive this.
Great. I love what you said when you were talking about mentoring. Some things are experiential and some things are intellectual. As I've heard Trey say time and time again, the one thing entrepreneurs don't have is experience. And that's the one thing, that these mentors are able to offer. So even Trey, if you could put some of those links to the Let's Grow North Texas site and also the mentor site. So that way people who are looking for mentors, are looking for that help, can access those. But we did have a question come up, and whoever, as we go through this, everyone who's watching, feel free to toss questions in the chat box. We'll be screening those and taking those as they come. So we have one question from Ryan. What's your take on exploring disruption during these tough times for market opportunities like online training or events and others?
Yeah, look, I mean, disruption is kind of a gift for entrepreneurs, right? I mean, in the business spectrum, they're clearly the most innovative and they're nimble and they can move quickly. Unfortunately, they're also the group that has usually the smallest cash reserves. So in a weird way, our constituents are the worst prepared for crisis, and in other ways, the best prepared for crisis. So, this disruption is really a great opportunity. And if you go back and you look at a lot of the major companies that are doing so well today, they started in a crisis. They started out of this, sort of necessity is the mother of invention, which is exactly where we're at. We're going to have to pivot. This is a huge disruption, a disruption on a world scale. So this disruption is going to create a lot of businesses and going to force a lot of other businesses to pivot. So, I like the word that they use there, disruption. And I like that within the question, there's a little bit of the answer as well, is that if I'm facing a huge disruption as a business and I'm pretty nimble, how do I get those ideas to make that pivot, that correct pivot? And I think that's it, is getting those mentors, getting folks from outside of your organization. I mean, this is not sit in a dark room and soul search the answers to what's next. This is get out in the community and find people who've had experience with crisis management and have seen a lot of these disruptions in the past and get with them and formulate your business plan. But definitely get a plan, right? This is not just going to come to you. This is going to take some work, and it's going to take interacting with folks outside of your organization.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of plans, what's kind of your feedback on creating that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day plan? Of course, we're not at the beginning of this crisis anymore, and maybe we're past the 30-day plan. Maybe we are at the 60, 90-day, or even, restarting and creating a new 30-day from here on out. What's kind of your advice there and strategy to entrepreneurs as they're thinking through the future when it's so uncertain?
Well, I mean, I think, the best way is just do it. I mean, there's dozens of reasons why you're not ready to start a planning process. And most of them are not great reasons, right? You need to jump in there. What I say is you need to have something you can publish to your network. So just, we're all a little bit shy and we feel like, it's this sort of editorial or an intellectual or business acumen. It's not. It's a starting point. Get that 90-day plan. And start with an inside circle that you trust and not judgmental, and have them polish it, and then slowly widen that circle and get your 90-day plan out to more and more folks. But you really need people to go out there and examine this and challenge it, because everything is going to change. Some folks I think are saying we need to weather the storm. So maybe that's a 30-day plan. I think, frankly, most people, they don't plan at all. They just hunker down and they weather it. In my view, it's not a storm. This is a change of seasons, right? This is very appropriate to sit down and say, in the next 90 days, I need to pivot my organization, because when I do come out of this, it's going to be very, very different. It's not that the storm blew over and everything's the same. It's you got a whole new change of season.
And what a great opportunity for small businesses, early stage companies, startups, because we have the ability to pivot way easier. We have the ability to look at a market, see an opportunity, explore that opportunity without spending tons of time and money on it, and just test things out. And so I think that is a unique opportunity that comes from this idea of exploring disruption. Ryan also said, had a thought that experiential learning, the experiential learn during tough times is much like muscle memory to athletes. The more you do, the more you learn. I think, Ryan, that's 100% true. My argument would be experiential learning at any time, good or bad, is like muscle memory. You've got to learn. And really, the easiest way to learn from experiences is that you might not be able to see it, but I have a couple huge gashes across my face, plunges in the side, limbs that have been cut off. You don't forget things like that, right? You don't forget colossal mistakes that you make that cost you a business or a business relationship or whatever the case may be. And so the key is that you learn from those experiences as they happen and not make the same mistake twice. And then to Bill's point, recognize the value of expanding your team beyond your employees. And that means mentors, advisors, board members, friends, whoever you can. And so as you're looking at your business and you're trying to figure out how do I build this and grow, how do I get input on my next 30-day strategic plan or the future of my business as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic, get people outside of your network, outside of your business, leveraging those mentors to help you and support you as you move forward. But on the other side, you need to be doing that for somebody else. And so when we tell people about the Fast Start Mentor platform, anybody that I see sign up as a mentor, I also expect them to sign up as a mentee, because I built 30 businesses. And anytime somebody wants to give me advice on how I could be better at building one of my businesses, I'm going to listen. Because the reality is, yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned a lot from those mistakes, but I don't always see everything. There's that blind spot we have as entrepreneurs sometimes, because we think we're so excited about our project, our baby, that we don't see that, we didn't clean it. We didn't clean her as well as we should have, or we didn't wipe the snot off the nose there. But the point being, other people will see that. And so as you are thinking about what you need and how you build that, also be thinking about how you can transfer that and offer to support and service to another group where your subject matter expertise, where your experience level would yield some real value there.
Yeah. What I've seen a lot of the speakers talk about as we've done these in weeks past is, what a great time to try something new. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone's making mistakes. Everybody's in a new field. Everybody was kind of put back on, not on the same playing field, but to an extent, we're all dealing with this. And what an opportunity to try new technology, try a new method, and fail and try again. That is the entrepreneurial mindset that we've definitely seen. We have another question from Ryan Gamble. What would you say are next-gen tools or platforms that allow for a board or round table of people willing to help a company or a nonprofit get quick turnaround time on feedback on next best steps or how to deal with new challenges, aka like a small 5-person WhatsApp group?
Well, I love that, because, I think that one thing that I don't think is going back is the way that we used to deal with occupancy, right? And the way we used to think about boards and advisory boards. And, I think that, we're going to be doing a lot more of these types of meetings, and it's very freeing. I mean, geographically freeing. And I think you've hit on a really important area for entrepreneurs is that, this allows you to this works, right? We've all found out over the last 6 or 7 weeks that we've been relatively effective at communication in a non-traditional way. So as an entrepreneur, yeah, your board of advisors just opened up. I mean, it doesn't have to be people down the street from you. It can be anywhere. I mean, they can be in Shanghai. And so, I think that the tools are going to be, this type of media. And, I think, in a larger context, I think that business is really going to look differently at ROI on occupancy cost. I don't think we're going to start thinking about it the same way. So as you look at who's involved in your organization, I think those definitions are widening. Certainly geographically, that you've got a lot more options than you used to, and it's really exciting, right? It's very exciting, and I think your occupancy costs are going to go down, and that's exciting too. So I think there's some really cool things coming out of that. And I'm not sure if I completely answered that question, but I think I got the gist of it.
Great. Another question we had, what are some good ways for non-technical founders to find coding expertise?
Oh man, I'm going to punt. Trey, you're better at answering the question than I am.
Well, so I think there's a lot of ways you can do that. I mean, what I would say is really great about how startups and businesses are built today is that we're good at figuring out what we're good at and what we're not good at, right? When I was growing up, what they told us, and Bill, you might remember this too, what they told us was figure out what your weaknesses are so you can get better at them, Well, that's what they are. They're inherently weaknesses. You're not going to get better at them. And why should you spend your time at it, right? They're a weakness. However, as we started to grow and millennials came in the marketplace and all sorts of, technology solutions and disruptions have become available, people now are saying, well, I'm going to figure out what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and I'm going to partner or hire or work with somebody that's different. So, I was like every other founder back in the day, non-technical, but building tech companies. And I went and taught myself JavaScript 2, C++, some of these other ones. And then I woke up one day, well, it was actually in the middle of the night because that's when I was trying to do it, and kind of said, what am I doing? I'm never going to code a website. That's not what I'm good at. What I need to do is understand the process of coding, the process of language generation, the process of agile project planning and computing. And so from that, I then started to surround myself with people so that I could really become a translator between the technical side and the business or marketing side. So if you're looking for to find coding experience, and that's something you want to do, I mean, maybe you're better than me and you've got two sides of the brain that work really well together. There's all kinds of schools out there, coding classes in schools, things like General Assembly, Code Academy. There's a ton of them. Iron Yard used to be one. There's a ton of them that were out there, and they've really streamlined and gotten more of them here. General Assembly specifically is one that I know that's in Dallas right now. Megan Mokes runs that program, and so you should reach out to her. That's a great way to get it. The other side is there's a new organization that started in town a couple months ago that Emmanuel Lopez and Will Akins and a couple other people put together, which is called Co-Founders League. And that's about connecting founders with other founders. And so the idea there is you come, and if you're a business person, you're looking for somebody with coding experience or whatnot. But I think that there's different ways you can do it. You can find somebody who can help you. There's meetups and things like that you can go to as well. I mean, if you want to go to a meetup for for a certain type of coding language, you're going to meet coders there. If you want to go to a Co-Founders League event, if you want to go to General Assembly or something like that's an opportunity as well. And then as we start to get, as the DEC network continues to do more of these virtual events, go to those virtual events, try to network online, connect people there. And then obviously once we come out of this and we have those physical events again, there's nothing more valuable than actually coming to events. 1 Million Cups has been a huge benefit for people in the community. I can't tell you how many companies over the course of my time in this space in North Texas have met their co-founders at a happy hour or at a 1 Million Cups or at a lean startup event or whatever the case may be. And they've gone on to build companies together and raise money and grow and do things like that. So that's the great thing about the ecosystem in North Texas is that, if you know what you're looking for, people will be there to help you find it.
Love that. I think something Trey hit the nail on the head on. One of my mentors once told me, learn something enough to be dangerous at it. Learn something to the point where you can understand it. You can be a translator, but you don't have to be the best at everything. So definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. I did want to back up to funding a little bit, though, as we get into this conversation. You talked about it briefly, Bill, and there's definitely many avenues right now, but it can feel like a mess sometimes or very ambiguous. What funding options are out there for entrepreneurs, whether it's SBA grants, loans, or funding from venture capitalists or funding from city funds or private funds? What's out there for people right now, and how can they find that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I sort of break it up in my mind to sort of funds to help you survive COVID and then sort of future funding. So we'll talk about sort of the emergency funding that's out there. And there's a lot of effort around this. And, I think the good news is the government funding got out there very quickly. And the bad news is the government funding got out there very quickly. So it went out there fast, but it didn't go out there precisely. And it didn't go out there simply. So, I think that taking full advantage of what's out there, and again, I'll just plug that North Texas, Grow North Texas business website really catalogs a lot of different options. And for every unique company, there's a set of options that make sense for you. You just have to do a little bit of research there, but at least it's in one place. Obviously the big one is the PPP, and a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners quite rarely took advantage of that. it is complex. And frankly, the complexity is going to be in the forgiveness part, not in the application. So if you thought it was complex applying, wait till you get to the forgiveness part. It's going to be interesting. So, just, prepare for that. And unfortunately, a lot of times when things get complex, it rewards the most sophisticated businesses. And society sometimes is more concerned about the less sophisticated businesses, the ones that might be employing people in underserved communities. So, as you do these things, one, you have to move quickly because as we've seen, these funds run out. And two, you have to be really prepared because you can miss out. There's not a lot of second chances on this stuff. So you need to make sure you do your research. And, these are big dollars and really necessary dollars for survival. So, finding a partner that can kind of help you through the application process, in the PPP's case, the forgiveness process. There's no shame in asking for help on that. You're not expected to understand all that stuff. I went to a seminar last night on the PPP forgiveness, and it's complex and it's tough, and I needed help. But going through and educating myself, I got first in line with some of the folks that I'm going to need help from. And I think that's going to make it a lot easier on our nonprofit. But in general, funding for the entrepreneurial community is always a challenge. I think the big difference that I see is, there's a huge gap between a cool product and an investable business, right? And really, funding is about closing that gap. How do I take a cool product and make it an investable business? And so I'm probably overstepping the question a little bit, but that's sort of my general views on the funding.
Well, and we put together a little bit ago some small business tips for funding. And so I'll go through those 5 tips really quick that definitely echo what Bill's already been saying. But first of all, find the opportunities that are out there and apply to as many of them as you can that are relevant to you, right? And we'll get into that later in the 5. But if it's a relevant thing for you, you qualify or you're eligible and it makes sense, apply to a bunch of them. And like Bill said, there's several of them out there that are open and available, and there may be more over time. Second is follow each checklist. Most places will give you a checklist and say, look, these are the 7 documents, the 2 documents, the 15 documents that you need. Follow that checklist, check it off. If you do not have the documents on that checklist, if it's even one document that you don't have, not that you can't find or that somebody can't help you find, but you just don't have, it's not applicable for your business, then you need to stop applying for that funding opportunity because you're not going to get it. Perfect example. Several of our businesses have applied for PPP funding over the last month. There was one of them that it was a totally legitimate business that should easily be eligible for the funding, but there wasn't that one exception. The documents, the tax documents that we had to showcase how the company was doing were not documents that they would let us use. Now, since then, they have expanded as they've learned and looked at exceptions and heard people saying, well, what about this? What about this? They've now allowed for those documents to be included. So I may or may not get the PPP for that, but I spent 75 to 100 hours on trying to convince them to let me apply for the PPP. And it didn't make sense. I wasn't following my own bias. It's part of the reason why we created this, because we were like, look, it's not going to work if you're not applicable. So follow the checklist. Third, pick a bank or funding partner with an existing relationship. And if you do not have an existing relationship with a banker, now's the time to get one. And it may not help you today, but it will help you in the future. And bankers, these private bankers are set up specifically to help you, to help navigate the issues of financing and loans and lines of credit and, effective planning for your financial stake. But if you have a banking partner or a partnership, use that. If you do not, then go to a smaller bank. Find somebody that's got less demand on them, right? A Bank of America, Wells Fargo, places like that, BBVA, they're going to have a ton of people coming to them because they have so many clients. If you go to a smaller local regional bank, you'll have a better chance of being able to be included. And they're also, specifically with the second round of PPP, there's designated funds created specifically for those smaller banks, so they make sure they have something there. Fourth, time is money. And the reason we talk about this one is because this concept that everything we do in our business has a cost. It's a cost of time, or it's a direct, actual cost. When you're looking at the PPP or any other funding opportunity and you're trying to figure out, should I spend my time on this? Well, calculate it like you would any other business prospect. If you're going to get $241 from the PPP and you're going to spend 75 hours working on it, it's probably not worth the time. But if you're going to get 20, 50, 100, 200, some people are getting millions of dollars in funding, then it's probably worth you spending that time on it. So if you look at this process of getting funding, you're eligible, you follow the checklist, you've got everything that you need. First of all, that'll make it a lot more likely that you're going to get funding and quicker because you're going to have that complete package. But second of all, look at that as a time versus money scenario. And finally, don't rely solely on funding to save your business. Not all of us are going to get funds. As I mentioned, a couple of businesses I'm associated with got the funds. A couple of businesses I'm associated with didn't get the funds. No real reason why one got it and one didn't, but that's the way it worked. But if you're relying on the funding to allow you to make it through this, then you're not being creative enough. You're not disrupting. You're not innovating. You're not thinking about the fact that what we're going through right now, all businesses go through. It's obstacles. It's things that get in their way. It's things that make life hard. It's things that make you feel like you're not going to make it to the next day. Now, I agree this one's different and it's substantive and should not be ignored, but you've got to plan for the fact that you may not be getting money. And as you do that and you bring in, like Bill's talked about, these mentors, these business support organizations, these resources that are out there, that's where it really, really becomes important. And that's why the DEC Network launched the Let's Grow North Texas business website, to give you access to those non-monetary resources that for free that is available. It's why the DEC Network launched the Fast Start Mentor Program, to directly connect you with somebody that can help you, a person, a subject matter expert, experienced entrepreneur, a service provider. Those things are important. And I think this list of 5 tips really ties into why the DEC Network is doing what the DEC Network is doing.
Awesome. Also, on the VC and startup funding front, we also, the DEC Network did a panel with one of our board members who happens to be in the VC space and a bunch of other investors. And he did a panel all around the investments that they are doing right now during COVID and what that looks like. Are they even doing funding? How to prepare if you are going to pitch, and how to access some of that funding for the investors that still are seeking that, and what exactly they're seeking. That will be up on our Let's Grow North Texas business page under our media tab. So that will also be out there here pretty soon. So also on that front, we have some information on that you can go check out later. But another question from Ryan: what's the one best learning moment each of you have had in the last year in regards to business, networking, and or tech?
Trey, you want to jump on that first?
Well, sure. I learn 20 things a day. And I always tell people that one of the things that bothers me the most about working with people is incompetence and people not thinking and making good decisions and people not thoroughly thinking through something before they make a decision. And then I realize, oh my gosh, I did that 7 times this morning. Who am I pointing my finger at? So, one of the best learning moments that I've had in the last year in regard to business, in regards to networking, is really the concept of looking at time as a currency and recognizing that we only have so much time in every day, and that we need to be judicious about how we spend that time, and that we allocate time to the right places. And so looking at the commitments we have under a different perspective and saying, there are only so many hours in the day. I have a family and kids, so I'm not going to work straight through from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. But in that time I have from 8 to 5 or 6 before I take a break and come back later, I can only do so much. I can only have so many phone calls. So you got to start thinking about who are those phone calls with, and how does that move forward the priorities you have. So really thinking, from a high level, what are the priorities and what's my purpose or goal that I want to accomplish? How do I go out to accomplish those? What network relationships, business decisions am I going to have that play into that and support that? And then let's create that margin down here, that 10 to 15% of my time that is going to be dedicated to doing free stuff, meeting with entrepreneurs, putting on events like this, trying to help support by raising funds and doing stuff like that goes down here. But if you can do all those things, what you start to do is you start to recognize and not feel bad about the fact that you're trying to do things that support your growth, and you don't take on initiatives or say yes to initiatives that that prevent you from accomplishing that overarching goal. So I would say what that that's probably one of the biggest things I've been learning the last year and probably the last 20 years. So maybe I'm not learning them well enough.
Always learning, the entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm. Bill?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this COVID really shook my world, and I think a lot of people's world. And the lessons I brought out of that was, you're running an organization, and some of you large organizations, some of you small organizations. And everyone's like, well, we got hit by this worldwide pandemic. What do we do next, boss? And they expect you to have the answers. And that's happened to me. And I'm like, I have no idea what to do next. I've never been through a pandemic. But you're expected to have those answers. And frankly, you do need to get those answers. But the lesson for me was where I got those answers from was the wisdom of the herd. Was that, we went back out to our folks and really said, just confessed, look, I don't know. This is all new to me. I've been through some crises. I've got some ideas, but let's get the entire group and the wisdom of the herd on this issue, this unique issue. And I was amazed at some of the things that our group came up with. I definitely could never have come up with by myself. And so, I know intellectually, if you would have asked me before, do you really believe in the wisdom of the herd? I would have told you yes. I think my experience through this crisis has really deepened the faith in the wisdom of the herd. Is it, kind of confessing you don't have all the answers, but your job is to get it in a format that your group, the folks in your organization can help answer those questions, right? And that's your job, is to keep refining those answers and keep asking the right questions and getting the answers. You don't have to have the answers. You just have to be able to ask the right questions.
Awesome. We do have another question from Steve. What do you believe will be the impact of the current COVID pandemic will be on co-working spaces? How does that impact startup companies and the ability to find mentoring relationships?
Well, I can take a crack at that. I mean, I think I think that co-working is magical in so many different ways. I do think that folks are going to find that they were at their kitchen table and they were still doing some really cool networking and forming mentorship relationships. So, look, I think the co-working is here to stay, and I think it's a great concept. I do think that as in all sort of occupancy industries, I think that it's not going to come back as strong as it once was. I think that we already were looking at a little bit of a settling in the co-working space. I mean, there was a lot of players out there, and that was all going to, sort of stabilize and coalesce on a smaller group. I think it's going to speed that up a lot. That's just my sense of co-working.
Trey, any comments?
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you, Bill, by any means. I think the customer for a co-working space may change. I think bigger companies are going to try to figure out how do we shrink down into, because I do think, and I'm a perfect example of this, I do not like my teams working remotely. I like them there with me so that I can watch them and I can tell that they're working and make sure that we're working well together and we're accessible. And I think what I've learned through this process is you have to trust the people you work with more. And fortunately for us, we have great teams that are fully capable of working by themselves and whatnot. So what we're seeing, and what a lot of companies are seeing, is that, hey, my productivity hasn't been hit as bad as I thought it was going to be hit by having people work from home. In fact, in some cases, it's more productive having people work from home. And so I think we're going to see people sort of saying, look, maybe we don't need a full-time office, or we don't need as big of an office, and we'll create a space where we have, 20 employees, but we'll have 5 employees a day in the office and give people the ability to work from home if they want, and so forth and so on. So I think we'll see that. I think the really, really small businesses, the 1-person businesses, the 2-person businesses, they just may choose to work at home. But the reality is they've been doing that for a long time. The reason they went to a co-working space is because they needed to be around other people. I had one of our customers at the deck one time told me, I just am tired of having lunch by myself. Right? Like, it was simple. It was just needing to be around other people, or if you have kids, getting out of the house, or it's just a different change of scenery. So I think the co-working spaces are going to evolve as well, and they're going to figure out how to serve the needs of the customers that they have. But I agree with Bill. I don't think it's going away. I think it's only going to be more prevalent. Now, I think everybody and their dog wants to create a co-working space. So there will be certain groups that rise to the top and that take the best advantage of this marketplace. And those are the ones, like any other business, that serve their customers the best. But I do think, we are changing the way that people view work. And I think this stay at home or work from home or option to be at home a couple times a week is going to only enhance. The one thing that I would encourage us to focus on is, although we're seeing equal or greater productivity while people are at home, we are in jeopardy of putting our employees into burnout, because when you're home, you're so available and everything's so accessible. The lines blur between when I'm working and when I'm not working. And so we need to be very intentional as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, to create a set of standards. This is when work starts. This is when work stops. If you have to work over, that's okay. But these are our expectations as a business. We want you to find time for yourself during the day. We want you to get up and walk around. We want you to do those sorts of things. The distractions, as an entrepreneur, the distractions that bother me about an office space that, is people talking and spending time that's not actually productive, is also something that's valuable. That's that social interaction and that ability, that camaraderie, and the team feeling that you're able to build is going to be important. But that's I've been thinking about it a lot, so I apologize for going on and on. But I think that's an important piece of one of the ways we need to think about how are we transitioning as we look at the future, and how are we supporting and creating the right culture and the right support for our teams. Because if not, we're going to see a lot of people. Right now, people don't want to leave jobs because they don't want to not have a job. But once we start to come out of this, we'll see a lot of people leaving jobs or looking for new jobs if we don't protect their time and protect their minds and their middle, states as a result of this.
Man, hey, Delanie, I've heard you talk about this issue, and I think you've got a really unique perspective. And now we're turning the tables on you. What do you think about this?
About what's going to happen to co-working, or about working from home?
Working from home, because I know you've.
I'll be candid. I hate working from home, but I am very much an extrovert. I was about to say to Trey, man, what I would give to chit chat with you guys, like just to be in the office and be able to, like you said, that camaraderie, and be able to say, oh, what's going on in your life, we kind of did that this morning on our call. Everybody kind of said how they're making this weekend fun, even though we're in quarantine. It's nice to hear what your colleagues are doing. And I do see everyone as a friend and a colleague, and it's nice to know what's going on in their lives. And plus, we've, Bill and I, we used to work across a table from each other, and I turned to him and say, hey, we've got this email that came in. I think we should respond this, and this way. What do you think? And he'd go, well, what about this and that? And it was like, okay, cool. Well, let's evolve this, and I'll respond like this. And it was like, great, cool, awesome. Let's do that. Where now I got to say, hey, Bill, can you hop on a call at 3? Then we got to get on the call, and then we've got to talk about it. So there's new challenges, and the communication's harder, and there's definitely pros and cons to working from home and working in the office. So I agree with Trey. I think there will be some sort of hybrid as we go back, because there are perks to working from home. I can start a load of laundry while, I'm on a call, or, I can just, like Trey said, your day might look different. You might not work 9 to 5 because you have kids, but you work 9 to 11, and you hang with the kids or tend to them in the way they need to be, and then you keep on going. So it does provide flexibility for people in those sorts of situations. But I'm ready to get back to the office and talk to people. I would love to chit chat. So I'll be chatty once we get back into the office. But yeah. Well, good. keep on throwing questions out there. All these questions are great. We're happy to answer them. But I did want to go back to a little bit, Bill, you mentioned, or it might have been Trey, one of y'all mentioned how you can't survive completely on these, loans or grants, and you shouldn't be trying to be. So say someone who isn't getting that funding, what can they do to survive right now? Maybe cutting costs or any other strategies that they can use to survive this long term, as this is obviously here to stay for a bit.
Well, I'll take it, Craig. So look, I mean, it's always the same in sort of this adversity, economic adversity is, how do I cut costs and maintain my most important assets, which is usually almost always people. And so creativity plays a lot into that, right? Is it, as we talk in our mentorship program to these very capable business owners, they're talking about exactly that. How do I cut costs without losing my most important assets? And the ones who are most successful that we see are the ones who are really creative and the ones that are partnering with employees and saying to them, look, let me show you the numbers. And I'm not saying that works every time. I mean, frankly, sometimes it doesn't work, but it's probably the best option you've got is, come clean with the numbers and explain and ask them to be creative with you. I mean, is there a way that you can go part-time for a while? Is there a way we can defer your compensation? I mean, is there some creative solution that allows me to cut costs, but yet retain my most important assets? And that's something that is best done as partners and talking to your employees and being honest with them. Now, the truth of it is, I've seen people do that and it's backfired on them. But most of the time, that is the most effective strategy.
Great. Another question from Anthony. Any new networking outlets that have emerged since COVID other than LinkedIn, or maybe just networking tips even during COVID?
Well, networking. I'll give you a networking tip. I've spent more time with my neighbors in the last 6 weeks than ever, and they have this social distancing block party every weekend. And their theory is that we're 6 feet apart in lawn chairs, but after 3 glasses of wine, that 6 feet disappears really quickly. So that networking has been interesting, right? But I think what the question goes to is, so is there a new technological breakthrough in network? And I haven't seen that yet, but I've seen people utilize what was already out there much more effectively and much more often. And, the thing that I just keep thinking, at least, is that, whatever you're doing now that's working, don't go back to business as usual after this is, primarily over. I mean, make sure that you pull those things forward, right? It's going to be a different world in a few weeks. It's going to be a very different world, and we're all going to have to change and utilize the lessons we've learned.
Definitely. As far as networking, I encourage people, of course, to go to virtual events like this. This is a great opportunity. Connect with the speakers or anybody you see, in the chat afterwards through LinkedIn. Yes, you're going back to LinkedIn, but it's another way to meet new people and give some semblance of normalcy. And I definitely think virtual events will be around here for a while and part of our new normal. But as you were mentioning, Bill, coming out of this, kind of on that topic, what is the key to emerge more prepared after this time? What can people be doing now to prepare for the post-COVID, whenever that is, or even just the new normal? What can entrepreneurs be doing now?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but, have a plan, right? I mean, I think that, we almost all as entrepreneurs start with a business plan and it's in pencil and we change it. And I get all that. I think that this is such a disruption that you really need to start from scratch on your business plan. That sitting down and remaking that business plan so that when you come out of this, you really are prepared for the new normal. And what new network have you formed in this time? I mean, what advisors have you pulled into you to help you get through this crisis? That's the way you're going to approach business in the future, right? Is that newly informed business plan and that new group of mentors and network. But, again, assuming that things aren't going to change a great deal after this, I think is a big mistake.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We've kind of talked on it the entire time. It's kind of been an entire theme, but adversity, we're all dealing with it. You all have to get through it, especially, to make your business survive. What is your advice to small business owners and entrepreneurs to get through adversity? What's your strategy when, faced with some sort of adversity like this?
Well, look, I think that, it's just my opinion is that, the emotional side of this isn't talked about a great deal. The business culture in the U.S. is really, for lack of a better word, very macho. That, business leaders are supposed to just tough it out. And I don't know if that really works. I think it can work for a time. I think that you've got to understand that this is emotionally draining. You're worried about your family. You're worried about your business. You got a lot of worries. And when you face that adversity, there's this tendency to isolate, right? And, go binge watch Tiger King. And you got to allow yourself to go do that, right? There's part of your that needs that. But you've got to fight the isolation, right? And you've got to admit when you're stressed out, and you've got to ask for help. So the biggest enemy, I think, to facing adversity is this isolation, this freeze that happens to us when we get scared, and we're all a little bit scared. The best thing to do is kind of admit you're scared, ask for help, and really fight that very human desire to just isolate yourself and get away from this stuff. You need to do the opposite, right? You need to, go binge watch Tiger King. I get it. But once you're through that, go out and face the community, right? And get those ideas and talk to your folks in your organization and really be open to new ideas. And, being in a room and isolating and sitting in a dark room thinking is not how you're going to solve these problems. You can solve some problems that way. You're not going to solve these problems that way, though.
Ryan said, instead, find the Tiger King inside of you. I thought that was good.
That sounds like a t-shirt. We got to do this. Great. I love it.
That's awesome. Y'all know I love trash TV, so I definitely binge watch Tiger King and can give you all the binge TV tips, or not tips, but recommendations. But yeah. Well, good. As we're kind of closing out, what are some general tips, that you give to entrepreneurs, or something that you can leave us with as we, close out for these entrepreneurs? It's, as we've mentioned time and time again, it's an uncertain time. So anything you can leave them with as we finish up today?
Well, I just talked about recognizing the emotional cost on the folks that you work with, your employees, your family. And I think that's really key. But there's huge amount of opportunity here. It's actually, once we sort of get past, and I don't mean to diminish a lot of the suffering that's going on, because there's real suffering going on, but there's huge opportunity too, right? And so if you can come at it with that lens of what's going on in my industry that creates an opportunity, because almost every industry is pivoting and huge disruption. And this is what entrepreneurs do. Is they look at disruption, they look at change, and they find the gaps, what's not being served, what's the opportunity in this. So, our community is in a very unique position to take full advantage of this. So, my advice is that, start finding kind of the exciting stuff in all of this. If your industry is changing, and I think almost every industry is going to change, where's the opportunity in it for you? How can you pivot your business to take advantage of that change? So, look, when you find that opportunity, you got to be careful not to look too gleeful, right? Because people are really suffering here. But it's very appropriate for you to stay positive and stay upbeat and try and find some kind of real future lines of business that weren't there 9 weeks ago. There's a lot of people who are going to create some really exciting businesses out of what's happened in the last 9 weeks.
Definitely. Well, with that, Trey, if you have any other tips or advice or just anything to leave us with, I'll toss it to you and close with that, and you can close us out.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us today. I think this is a very productive conversation. Bill, thank you for being here and for your commitment to entrepreneurs and small business owners in the North Texas region. What the DEC Network is doing under your leadership is incredible. And I think really responding rapidly to the needs. Once again, it's the benefit of being a small shop is that you saw a need in the community, you responded to it, and you're fulfilling it. What I would say to people on the phone is please leverage organizations like the Deck Network, the Fast Start Mentor Program. Somebody had asked before, how do you get mentors and network with mentors during this time? Well, we've got a bunch of them that are available. So come sign up to do that. Sign up to be a mentor, sign up to get a mentor. Go to the Let's Grow NorthTexasBusiness.com page and look at some of the resources, share that, engage with the newsletter and the content and the social media stuff coming out from the deck, but also find other organizations that exist that are a good fit for support that you need. There's so many organizations out there right now trying to find ways to help better support their customers or the clients in need or the entrepreneurs that are trying to grow. And that's, as Bill mentioned earlier, there's about 100 organizations across North Texas that we work with and partner with that have incredible programs, incredible events, virtual events, and incredible resources that could benefit you. So that's why we send people to Let's Grow North Texas Business, because we want to be able to connect you to those groups there and make sure that you're available. One of the things we've learned over the times we've been involved in this work is that it's not that the organizations aren't doing great things. It's that we as the entrepreneurs don't know the organizations are out there. And so if we can help connect those dots for you, that'd be great. The last thing I'd say, this is what I sort of say to everybody is, and why I think the North Texas community is so valuable for entrepreneurs. And that's because we have a give first mantra. We have a give first culture. And if you are not out there looking about how you can support and serve other people while you're also looking for how you can be supported, then you're not contributing to what makes North Texas great. You're not contributing to what makes this such a great place for entrepreneurs. And so I would encourage each of you to find out how you can serve, how you can give back, how you can participate. And what I've seen through that is that the karma, if you will, it all comes back around. What goes around comes around. And when you are out there looking for a way to support people, you yourself are going to be supported. And the great thing about this community is everybody's willing to help. We all want to see each other succeed. There's not a zero-sum game going on here where one entrepreneur succeeds, another entrepreneur fails. We all can succeed. And now we have an opportunity better than any chance that we've had in our modern time to try to think of, to innovate, to come up with new ideas, to serve a market that needs to be led. So thank you for your commitment to spending time with us today and every Friday. I think next week we are potentially moving to a different platform to use for our communications. We've had some people that have had a little bit of difficulty logging onto this, and so we're going to move to a more public forum, like a Facebook Live or something like that. So we'll get all that stuff out there, but it's going to be the same marketing, the same content, and we're going to continue to find great entrepreneurs like Bill that can come in and support and answer your questions and give you advice that we hope you leave with a little bit better perspective on how to address your company and how to make your company go. And hopefully just feeling encouraged that you're not alone. This feeling of I have no idea what I'm doing or how am I ever going to make it for tomorrow or whatever the case may be is something that we all feel. And that there inside of that is camaraderie and is comfort and is value and encouragement. So we want to do that as well. So thank you guys. Have a great Friday, a great week, Memorial Weekend. And we look forward to seeing you next week on Fridays Are for Founders.